Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle Haas. And in this video, we're taking a look at Go Collect's hottest trending comics for the week of September 17th. Now, for those who don't know, Go Collect puts out bi-weekly articles that switch between trending comics and hottest comics. This week, we got trending comics, which is a more curated list of books that are really starting to get liquid out there in the market. But before I get into the books, if you guys could drop me a like or comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content, helps support the channel, doing those things, I would appreciate it. But let us get into this video here today. Now, of course, like I always say every Monday, this article is written by Matt Tuck. I'll put a link in the description if you guys want to do your own reading, but I know you guys don't like to read, neither do I, so that's why I'm going to break it down for you here today. And coming in at the number 5 spot, we got one of the best first appearances of a villain character out of the Bronze Age. We got Iron Fist number 14, new to the list this week, now sitting in the 98th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this is the book that came out in 1977, written by Chris Claremont, that would feature the first appearance of the character known as the Sabretooth. Now, we all know Sabretooth, of course, Wolverine's biggest rival, one of the biggest X-Men villains there is in the X universe, and it's very cool that he made his first appearance in Iron Fist number 14 of all places, as opposed to a X-Men book, for instance. And this is one of those books that has been, really hot in the market for quite some time. Of course, we got a lot of Sabretooth, in pop culture. He's been in the Fox franchise films. He's been in the Wolverine's origin movies. I mean, Sabretooth has been in the, spotlight in pop culture for quite some time. So this was a book that, back in the day, at least some years back, it was actually one of the most expensive books out there in the market, even more so than, similar books that came out, like first appearance of Bullseye or first appearance of Thanos. This was actually one of the ones that people like to have the most. But, kind of where it is today, I feel like it's kind of come back down to earth a little bit. I mean, it's still a very, very expensive book, but now people are starting to think, this might be a good entry point back into this book. And there's a lot of excitement still around the character of Sabretooth because, we know we're going to get Wolverine at some point in the MCU. We got to assume that we're also going to get Sabretooth. And then as Matt points out in the article, they're bringing in Sabretooth into the Exiles comic book run. And anytime, you have like appearances of characters going on in current comic books, being that Kevin Feige is the head of all creative of Marvel, you got to start to wonder, okay, if they're reintroducing this character back into, the limelight, does that mean that they're priming the audience for them to make an appearance in some kind of, TV show or movie later on down the line? So that's got people thinking, hey, maybe Iron Fist 14, this is a good time to jump in on this book. And that could be one of the reasons why it's trending this week. But as we dig into the numbers for this one, let's take a look at some of the values here. We got 9.8, 201 on the census. Fair market value suggests to be 4,000. Hasn't been a sale recently, but 90-day moving is 4,300. And this is a book like, every other book that you've seen in 2021 had its big rise up, had its pullback. I'm not so sure that this book has, kind of gone back in line to the trend line when we think about, Bronze Age books, where they should be selling. But it is a very rare book to find in the 9.8 grade. As you can see right there, 9.8 grades for this are only the top 3.5% of all books that are graded. So a very difficult book to find at that 9.8 grade. And, when you have books that are rare like that, at least in terms of, all of the books that are out there for this thing, that could be a better indication of it being able to hold its value because there's not going to be as many sellers at that 9.8 level. 9.6 is, on the other hand, 521 in the census, fair market value 1,500, 30-day moving kind of right in line to that. And, like the 9.8, you've seen it shoot up all the way in 2021 and had its big correction. And now this is kind of selling more in line to the trend line overall. Now this book at 9.6 is top 12% as well. So again, not easy to find this one at the 9.6 grade. And then of course, down here at the bottom, you might see some books slabbed at the 3.0 and the 2.0 range. But generally speaking, if you go onto eBay looking for raw copies, you might be able to find one selling around that $250 to $300 level. All right, let's move on now to the fourth hottest trending comic of the week. And the fourth hottest trending comic of the week is a classic book, a very cool one. This is Batman number 497, new to the list this week, now sitting in the 92nd slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this is the book written by Doug Moench that came out in 1993 and would feature the infamous moment of Bane breaking Batman's back. Now, of course, we got this thing in the Christopher Nolan Batman Dark Knight Rises movie. We got that moment where Bane and Batman went at it in the sewers, and we had the iconic part where Bane took Batman up and over his head and slammed him down, breaking his back. And this has just been one of those books that I think is sort of a classic Copper Age darling, one that everybody likes, one everyone that has nostalgia for. But, this one's really interesting too. And as Matt points out in the article, a lot of people are starting to think, maybe Bane is going to be next for the Matt Reeves franchise. I personally don't know why they would bring Bane back into, what they're doing currently with Batman. I mean, that might be kind of cool if they want to do a multiverse multiverse thing, and maybe they can figure out a way to bring back Tom Hardy or in some kind of way. But there's a lot of speculation that Bane could be a character that comes into this universe if they're doing more. So I think due to the success of the Batman franchise, there's been a lot of movement towards Batman keys overall. Everybody's just looking for who the next villain could be. What are some of the keys? It was Batman Comic Book Day just the other day. So I think a lot of people are just looking at the Batman stuff. And this is one of those books that is very affordable still for a lot of collectors. And as we dig into the numbers for this one, let's take a look at some of the values here. There actually are two 10.0s on the census and a few 9.9s, but let's stick to the 9.8s. 2,600 on the census. Fair market value is $80. 30-day moving is $78. So as you can see, 9.8s for this thing are very, very affordable. If you're someone who just likes it, it just looks good on a shelf. It's a very, very cool moment, kind of historic in that sense. And when you look at the graph, certainly there's been, some massive spikes here and there, but generally speaking, this book was, $60 all the way back in 2012 when we had Bane and the Christopher Nolan Batman, and now it sells at, $78, the most recent sale. So, not a bad entry point overall into this book. And then of course, at the low grade 1993, not going to see it slabbed at that low grade, but when you go into eBay looking for raw copies, typically you can see them being sold anywhere from that $15 to $30 range. All right, let's move on now to the third hottest trending comic of the week. And the third hottest trending comic of the week is a very interesting one, and it's also going to relate to the second hottest trending comic of the week. So I may not belabor this one too much, but this one right here is Marvel Spotlight number 32, new to the list this week, now sitting in the 80th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this is the book that came out in 1977, written by Archie Goodwin, that would feature the first appearance of the character known as Spider-Woman, the Jessica Drew version. Now, Jessica Drew Spider-Woman, definitely an interesting character, one that I think a lot of comic book collectors have a fondness for. But, the thing about Spider-Woman is that she just hasn't had that moment in pop culture yet. It doesn't seem like she's had that breakthrough TV show or movie appearance or even cartoon show that really, took her to that next level. And it feels like, that's all this character needs to really be elevated to being kind of like an A-tier character, especially, a female character out there in the Marvel universe. And, I always say on this channel here, it's very interesting what's going on with her rights, where Sony has the, license to the character of Spider-Woman, but the MCU has the license and the free use to the character of Jessica Drew. And there's a lot of touch points that they could be using for a character like this. We have the Madam Web movie going on. Obviously, Sony's going to want to do a lot of Spider-Man and Spider-Universe content. And so there's been rumors of like Olivia Wilde doing a Spider-Woman movie. And then there's also talks right now, maybe in Secret Invasion, we all know that Varenki took the identity of Spider-Woman. Perhaps they would bring in like a Jessica Drew. Like, is Emilia Clarke's character actually named Jessica Drew? You never really know, right? That would be very interesting if they decide to do that. And so a lot of people are starting to look back to Marvel Spotlight number 32, first appearance of this character, thinking that, hey, this is a book that is corrected really hard out there in the market. Based on where the values are, I think it's very, very affordable, especially at the raw grade comic book prices. And I think a lot of people are thinking like this could be a big character in the future, and people are jumping in on this particular character. But as we dig into the numbers for this one, I won't overtalk it because we're going to talk about perhaps this character again very soon. 9.8s have 220 on the census. Fair market value is $4,000. 30-day moving $42.75. This is definitely a very expensive book at the 9.8 level because it's a full black cover. Very difficult to find this book in the 9.8 grade. You can see top 5% for 9.8s right here. And this is one of those ones that, shot up like everything in 2021, had some ups, had some downs. But because it's so rare at this high grade, it still sells very much at a premium. Last sale though on Heritage was $3,600. So, definitely correcting a little bit, but a pretty strong support floor overall. And then of course, down here at the bottom, 1977, not going to always see it slapped at the low grade. But when you go into eBay looking for raw copies of this thing, typically you can find them selling around that $120 to $150 price point, depending on the deal and depending on the grade. All right, let's go on now to the second hottest trending comic of the week. And the second hottest trending comic of the week is actually one that is related to our previous one, and I think you guys can see why. This is Spider-Woman number 1, up 13 spots, now sitting in the 28th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this is the book that came out in 1978, written by Marv Wolfman, that would feature the first issue of the ongoing run for the character of Spider-Woman. So in the year prior, she made her debut in Marvel Spotlight 32, and then a year later, she would have this issue right here that would kick off, her solo series that went on for about 37 to 40 issues or so. And a lot of people really, really like this cover. I think the Marvel Spotlight 32 cover is also very cool, but it's missing her, iconic hair coming out of her mask right there, which I think, a lot of people like this kind of character design for the Spider-Woman character, which which is why this is always a book that is, kind of in demand, in desire, as well as Marvel Spotlight 32. And as Matt points out in the article, there's been kind of leaks right now that in Into the Spider-Verse, that perhaps they're going to have a villain reveal of Spider-Woman being a character in that because of, some toy leaks and things like that. So a lot of people are thinking, like, again, there's a lot of opportunity for Spider-Woman to be making her way into the MCU or the Sonyverse. Maybe it's going to happen as soon as Into the Spider-Verse. I mean, it's certainly going to happen in Into the Spider-Verse because, Issa Rae currently has been announced that she's going to be voicing the character of Jessica Drew. But it could be leading to, bigger and better things for this character overall down the line. So a very, very cool book regardless, very cool character, and we will see where it all goes. But as we dig into the numbers for this one, let's take a look at some of the values for the Spider-Woman number one. 9.8s have 1,509 on the census. Fair market value is $300. 30-day moving, right in line, $320. Just a book that I think always sells out there in the market, is always desired. But because of the print count for this one, this is one that definitely has that, graph that we've come accustomed to where, a steady increase over the years, huge spike in 2021, and now is basically back in line to the trend that it was beginning to have all the way back in 2018. And then 9.6s, 210 fair market value, but those ones are really, really pulling back. 30-day moving for them is 120. And then down here at the bottom, of course, 1978 book, not going to see it slab at the low grade, but when you go into eBay looking for raw copies, I mean, maybe you can find them selling around that $30 to $50 price point, depending on the grade that you're looking for. Near mint quality grades, probably looking at that $60 range or $70 range. And then, mid grades, maybe you can find one for $30. All right, let's move on now to the hottest trending comic of the week. And the hottest trending comic of the week is a classic book, one that everybody should have in their collection. This one, of course, is Incredible Hulk, number 340, up 19 spots, now sitting in the 20th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this is the book that came out in 1988, written by Peter David and drawn by Todd McFarlane, that would feature the iconic cover of Todd McFarlane, where Wolverine has the reflection of Hulk in his blades. As to why this book is getting hot this week, well, over the last couple weeks in the hot list, we've been talking about Hulk 181s and 180s and things like that. There were certainly the Wolverine rumors and She-Hulk. There's been a lot of murmurs, of course, that Wolverine is eventually going to make his way to the MCU. But I think one of the factors that is most leading to this book getting hot this week is that CGC announced a Todd McFarlane signing. And for that reason, collectors are going to be looking to books that they can get signed by him. And this is one of the great ones to do just that. I mean, a lot of people love to have, people sign along the clause, which I think is a very, very cool for this particular book. So I would suspect that one of the reasons why this is the hottest trending books this week is simply due to the fact that people want to get their copy, get it ready to send over to CGC and get Todd McFarlane to sign it. And I certainly can't blame him, because when it comes to iconic books that people just want to own, I would definitely put this one in there. And as we dig into the numbers for this one, let's take a look at some of the values here. There's actually 3 9.9s on the census, but let's talk about the 9.8s. 925 9.8 grades for this one. Fair market value is $1,850. 30-day moving is even above that, $1,957. And this is one of those instances where, you can see 9.8's not easy to get for this particular book, even being a 1988 book. A 9.8 is still in the top 10%. And for that reason, this is a book that, yes, it did shoot up in 2021, but has not really dropped off in the same kind of way that a lot of the other grades for this book actually have. And so, this is one that I think, people just want to have this one in the 9.8 grade. As you can see, last couple sales, $23.99, $18.99, $2,000. Things like that. So a lot of people, paying big money for this particular book. And I think it's one that, typically will stay in people's collections. 9.6 is, on the other hand, much more affordable at $475. You can see this one is one that shot up and has had its pullback overall. So definitely, those 9.8 grades are really, really pristine, really, really preferred by comic book collectors. And then down here at the bottom, not going to see it slabbed at the low grade, but typically speaking, when you go onto eBay looking for raw copies, you can see them being sold around that $140 to $150 level, depending on the grade, depending on the deal that you can find for yourself. Anyways, that is all I have for this video. Those were Go Collect's hottest trending comics for the week. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys have any of these books? Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and I will see you in the next one.